where legends breathe again. Eldmyth. The wind howls across a desolate, frozen plain. Ancient standing stones, crusted with rime and etched with forgotten runes, stand as silent sentinels against a sky the color of bruised twilight. This is not a place for the living. It is a place of memory, of power, of whispers on the edge of hearing. Here, at the dawn of time, our story begins. It is a tale not of a simple god, but of a paradox wrapped in a legend, a king who sought knowledge through self-mutilation, a warrior who mastered poetry, a father who sacrificed his son for wisdom. He is the Allfather, the High One, the god of the hanged. He is Odin. For centuries his name has echoed through the sagas, a complex and shadowy figure whose influence stretches from the bloody fields of Viking warfare to the quiet contemplation of the mystic. Who was this one-eyed wanderer? What drove him to hang himself from the world tree, to pluck out his own eye in a desperate bargain for understanding? In the shadow of Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, his is the mind that plots, schemes, and prepares for an inevitable end. So, let us journey together into the heart of the Norse cosmos, to the golden halls of Asgard and the icy roots of Yggdrasil, to unravel the enigma of Odin. We will witness his terrible sacrifices, his cunning deceptions, and his profound sorrow, piecing together the portrait of a deity who was as much a seeker as he was a ruler, whose relentless pursuit of knowledge defined an entire mythology and continues to captivate us today. To understand Odin, we must first understand the world he ruled. The Norse cosmos was not a flat earth, but a vast, vertical reality known as Yggdrasil, the world tree. Imagine an immense ash tree of impossible scale, its branches scraping the heavens, its roots delving into the underworld. Its trunk was the axis of all existence. High in its upper boughs lay Asgard, the realm of the Aesir gods, a place of gleaming palaces and towering walls. Here, at the very heart of this divine fortress, stood Odin's hall, Valhalla, the hall of the slain. Its roof was made of shields, its rafters were spears, and its doors were so vast that countless warriors could pass through them. This was Odin's ultimate ambition, to gather the greatest of mortal warriors, the Einherjar, who died bravely in battle. Each day, these chosen dead would fight each other in glorious, bloody combat on the fields of Asgard, only to be resurrected each evening to feast in Valhalla's endless mead hall. But why? What purpose did this eternal army serve? It was all preparation for Ragnarok, the final, apocalyptic battle where the gods themselves would fall. Odin, the seer, knew this fate was inescapable. His entire reign was a long, strategic game to arm himself for that ultimate confrontation. He was not merely a king enjoying his power. He was a general preparing his forces for a war he knew he could not win, yet was compelled to fight. This profound, tragic awareness is the key that unlocks the mystery of his often ruthless and always complex actions. Odin's quest for wisdom was not a gentle scholarly pursuit. It was a violent, painful, and relentless obsession. He understood that power resided not just in strength, but in knowledge, and he was willing to pay any price to obtain it. His first, most famous sacrifice was at the Well of Urd, one of the three great wells that lay beneath Yggdrasil's roots. This was no ordinary spring. Its waters were guarded by the Norns, the three sisters who wove the fates of gods and men alike into an immense cosmic tapestry. Odin, drawn by the whispers of the well's profound secrets, journeyed there alone. He approached the well, its waters dark and shimmering with reflected starlight, and confronted the silent, imposing Norns. He desired a drink from the well, a draught of ultimate knowledge, but the price was his eye. Without hesitation, the god plucked out his own eye and cast it into the shimmering depths. As it sank, the waters swirled, and visions of past, present, and future flooded his mind. This was not a loss, but a transformation. He gained the ability to see the hidden workings of the universe, but his vision was now forever altered. He saw the cost of everything, the sorrow woven into the fabric of reality. His face, now bearing the hollow of his sacrifice, became a permanent testament to the truth that all wisdom comes with a terrible price, a lesson he would learn again in an even more gruesome trial. But one sacrifice was not enough. The knowledge of the runes, the fundamental magic that held the universe together, called to him. This power required a payment far greater than a single eye. Odin journeyed to the very center of the world, to the trunk of Yggdrasil itself. There, he took his own spear, Gungnir, and in an act of ultimate self-violence, he impaled himself upon its point, hanging himself from the great tree. For 9 days and 9 nights, the Allfather hung between life and death, a sacrifice unto himself. The winds tore at him, the cold seeped into his bones, and the world faded into a blur of agony and revelation. He was denied all sustenance, all comfort, staring into the abyss of his own mortality. On the final, desperate night, as his life force ebbed, his gaze fell upon the runes carved far below at the tree's base. In that moment of ultimate suffering, their meanings were seared into his soul. He screamed a mighty scream, and with his last strength he reached down and seized the runes, absorbing their power before falling from the tree, reborn. He had died as a seeker and was resurrected as a master of magic, his voice now capable of calming seas, quenching fire, and binding souls. This ordeal, the Havamal tells us, was the source of his 9 mighty magical songs. He gained everything, but the memory of that torment, of that lonely vigil at the threshold of death, never left him. Odin was never alone in his travels or his rule. His quest for knowledge was aided by his 2 constant, feathered companions, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory. Each morning, as the dawn broke over the walls of Asgard, Odin would dispatch these twin ravens from his high throne, Allfather. They would fly forth across the 9 realms, their black wings beating against the winds of fate, their sharp eyes missing nothing. They observed the births of kings and the deaths of paupers, the strategies of generals and the whispers of lovers. They were Odin's eyes and ears in the world, a living, breathing network of information. As the day waned, they would return, one after the other, perching on his broad shoulders. There they would lean and close, their beaks near his ears, and whisper all they had seen and heard. It is said that Odin feared one day they would not return, for it was thought and memory that truly ruled the world. These birds were not mere pets, they were extensions of his own consciousness. Through them, he maintained his web of awareness, his strategic advantage. The image of the one-eyed god with his ravens is iconic, a symbol of a mind that is never at rest, constantly processing, analyzing, and remembering, forever patrolling the borders of his understanding. Another loyal companion was his steed, Sleipnir, a creature as miraculous and strange as his master. Sleipnir was no ordinary horse. He was an 8-legged gray stallion, the offspring of the trickster god Loki, who had, in a bizarre and cunning episode, shapeshifted into a mare to distract a giant stallion. Sleipnir was the finest horse among gods and men, capable of galloping not only over land and sea, but also through the air and down into the very depths of Helheim, the land of the dead. His 8 legs symbolized unimaginable speed and stability, allowing him to traverse the boundaries between the realms with ease. Odin, the Wanderer, relied on Sleipnir for his many journeys. When he rode to the well of Urd, he rode Sleipnir. When he needed to descend to consult a dead seeress, it was upon Sleipnir that he traveled. The horse was his vehicle for crossing the impossible geographies of Yggdrasil, a testament to the fact that Odin's power often came from the most unexpected and, at times, morally ambiguous sources. The union of the one-eyed god and the 8-legged horse is an image of profound power, a fusion of divine will and primal, magical strength, embodying the ability to move through all layers of reality, from the highest thought to the deepest memory. Odin's mastery of battle was not merely physical, it was deeply psychological and magical. He was the patron of the berserkers and the Ulfidnar, warriors who fought in a state of ecstatic, trance-like fury, wearing the skins of bears and wolves. They were said to be immune to fire and iron, their strength superhuman, their rage a gift, or a curse, from the Allfather. But Odin's influence on the battlefield was more direct and terrifying. He was the master of the wild, chaotic force known as the Wild Hunt. On stormy, windswept nights, a ghastly procession would tear across the sky. Led by Odin astride Sleipnir, his spectral form illuminated by lightning, the hunt was a cacophony of howling hounds, bellowing horns, and the tormented cries of the dead warriors who followed him. To see the Wild Hunt was an omen of catastrophe, war, plague, or death. It was believed that any mortal caught outdoors during its passage could be swept up into the ghostly host, never to be seen again. This aspect of Odin reveals his darker, more fearsome nature. He was not just a gatherer of the noble dead in Valhalla. He was a reaper of souls, a storm god who reveled in the chaos of conflict, a divine force of nature as unpredictable and dangerous as the northern gales themselves. Despite his vast knowledge and power, Odin was not omniscient. The shadow of Ragnarok, the prophesied doom of the gods, loomed over all his actions. He knew the broad strokes of this final battle, that the wolf Fenrir would break his bonds, that the serpent Jormungand would rise from the ocean, and that he, Odin, would be devoured by the wolf. This knowledge haunted him, driving his every scheme. In a desperate attempt to avert fate, he fathered a son, the god Vidar, a being of immense strength and silence, whose sole purpose, it was foretold, was to avenge his father by killing Fenrir. Odin raised children as pieces in a cosmic game of chess. Another poignant story is that of his son, Baldur the Beautiful. Baldur was the most beloved of the gods, radiant and good. When he began to have nightmares of his own death, his mother Frigg extracted an oath from every entity in creation not to harm him, all except the mistletoe, which she deemed too young and harmless. The gods in sport would throw weapons at the invulnerable Baldur, laughing as they bounced off. But Loki, the agent of chaos, learned of the mistletoe. He tricked Baldur's blind brother, Hodder, into throwing a dart of mistletoe, which pierced Baldur's heart, killing him instantly. The light of the world was extinguished, and Odin, the Allfather, the master of secrets, was powerless to prevent it. He knew the prophecy, yet he could not stop its fulfillment. The death of Baldur was the point of no return, the first true step towards Ragnarok, and it cast a pall of profound grief over all of Asgard, most of all upon its king. The death of Baldur set in motion the final, irrevocable chain of events. Ragnarok was no longer a distant prophecy but an approaching storm. The world would be consumed by a great winter, the Fimbulwinter, which would last for 3 years without summer. Brother would kill brother, and all bonds of kinship would shatter. Then would come the sounding of the Gjallar horn, and the forces of chaos would be unleashed. The giant wolf Fenrir, now freed, would advance with fire blazing from his eyes and nostrils. The Midgard serpent, Jormungand, would rise from the sea, spewing venom and causing tidal waves. Loki would lead the army of the dead from Helheim, and the fire giants led by Surt would march from Muspelheim, burning the world in their wake. The gods, led by Odin, would meet this onslaught on the field of Vigrid. It was for this day that Odin had prepared his entire life. The halls of Valhalla would empty as the Einherjar, his chosen warriors, marched forth to face the legions of darkness. This was their purpose, the reason for their eternal feasting and fighting. And in the midst of this ultimate battle, the prophecy would be fulfilled. Odin, the Allfather, the High One, would ride straight toward the monstrous wolf Fenrir, Gungnir in his hand. He would face the embodiment of the chaos he had spent his life trying to contain, the very destiny he had sacrificed his eye and hung himself to understand. In the end, knowledge was not enough. Strategy was not enough. The great sacrifice at Yggdrasil had shown him his fate, and with grim determination he met it. As the battle raged around them, Odin fought Fenrir with all the power and skill he possessed. But the prophecy was true. The mighty wolf, grown to an unimaginable size, its jaws stretching from earth to heaven, would overpower the father of the gods. In a moment of cosmic finality, Fenrir opened his monstrous maw and swallowed Odin whole. The Allfather was gone. The king of Asgard had fallen. The death of Odin signaled the beginning of the end for the old order. Thor would fall to the venom of the Midgard serpent, Freya would be slain by Surt, and Loki and Heimdall would kill each other. The world itself would be consumed by fire and water. Yet the Norse vision of the cosmos was cyclical, not linear. From the ashes of the old world, a new green earth would emerge, fertile and peaceful. A new generation of gods would appear, including Odin's own son, Vidar, who, in an act of silent vengeance, would tear Fenrir apart. The legacy of Odin would not be forgotten. It would be the foundational myth of the world that was to come. His quest for wisdom, his acceptance of his doom, and his willingness to fight a battle he knew he would lose became the very model of heroic fatalism, the Norse concept of facing one's destiny with courage, no matter how grim. The influence of Odin did not die with the Viking Age. He has been resurrected countless times in the modern imagination, a testament to the enduring power of his complex character. In Richard Wagner's epic opera cycle, Der Ring des Nibelungen, he appears as Wotan, a similarly doomed ruler whose thirst for power leads to his downfall, a figure of Shakespearean tragedy. In the pages of modern fantasy, his shadow falls long. J.R.R. Tolkien, a scholar of Norse myths, drew heavily upon Odin for his characters. Gandalf the Grey, the wise old wanderer with a wide-brimmed hat and a spear, and the Dark Lord Sauron, who, like Odin, has a single, piercing eye that sees much. In comic books and blockbuster films, Odin is portrayed as a majestic, bearded king, a stern father and a ruler of a celestial realm, from Marvel's Thor to Neil Gaiman's American Gods. He represents the archetype of the wise old man, the magician king, the seeker of hidden truths. His name is invoked in heavy metal music, in video games, and in modern pagan practices, where his aspects of wisdom, poetry, and magic are revered. Odin has transcended his mythological origins to become a global icon, a symbol of the relentless pursuit of knowledge, the burden of leadership, and the profound courage required to face a predetermined fate. So, who is Odin? He is the one-eyed king in the Golden Hall and the gaunt wanderer in the tattered cloak. He is the whisper in the raven's call and the battle cry of the berserker. He is the seeker who gave his eye for a drink from the well of wisdom, and the god who hung himself on the world tree to grasp the power of the runes. He is the father who gathers the heroic dead, and the father who loses his most beloved son to a trick of fate. He is the strategist who plans for centuries, and the warrior who is ultimately devoured by the chaos he sought to control. Odin is not a god of simple answers. He is a god of profound questions. His story forces us to ask, what is the price of wisdom? How do we face an inevitable end? Can courage exist in the absence of hope? The wind that once howled across the frozen plains of Ginnungagap still carries his name. The runes he seized still hold their power. And the echo of his sacrifice reminds us that to seek knowledge, to understand our world and our fate, is a journey that often requires us to give up a part of ourselves, to stare into the abyss, and to emerge forever changed. Another legend fades, but the next awaits. Like this video, subscribe and continue the journey through myths.